The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and welcome to the ACEC RT Financial Wellness webinar series. Today we will be discussing navigating investment choices. We appreciate all of you taking the time to join us today. A few items to go over before we get started. First, in order to ensure everyone has the ability to hear the information presented by our guest speaker, everyone will be on mute during the webinar. Second, please feel free to write in any questions you have using the Q&A tool on the webinar menu. And at the end, we will take some time to go through these. And now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker from PensionMark Retirement Group, Devin Duex. As Vice President of Client Relations, Devin manages the client service team and has traveled across the nation speaking to clients, participants, and industry professionals about various retirement plan topics. Her passion includes developing service deliverables that push and expand the industry while offering clients tools to manage their fiduciary responsibility and participants the ability to become more retirement ready. Thank you for leading us through this webinar today, Devin, and now I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tori, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for taking some time to join in. We're going to be focusing today on the ACEC Retirement Trust and specifically how you can navigate your investment choices underneath of the trust. So many of you know that you probably received an announcement from Great West that you're having some investment changes that are effective December 19th. And you probably got that announcement and thought, okay, maybe I should take a look at my investments, or maybe you thought, what do these changes mean? How do I get assistance? What do I do with this information? And so what I want to talk about today will hopefully clarify some of that for you. Some things that you should consider around the investment choices under the plan, some things that you can take away from today's meeting to hopefully apply to your situation, and also assist you with this upcoming enhancement that's taking place regarding your investment choices under the plan. One of the features under the trust that I'm going to tie in as we kind of walk through this is a newer service that came out, and actually part of why we were brought onto the trust is the wellness program. So many of you probably saw announcements around the wellness program. There is a call center as part of that wellness program. And so at the end, you'll have some information about that, and I'll probably mention it throughout the presentation as well. But if you have any questions around retirement planning, investment choices, understanding your situation specifically, please reach out to the Wellness Center. That's really what we're here for. Everyone in that Wellness Center is licensed to give you investment education to help you understand how to apply these choices to your portfolio to help you get closer to that goal, which is, I think, for all of us to have retirement readiness, to be able to retire, not have to maybe come back to work, or to see that future that you've planned for come to fruition. So please take that information down at the end and reach out to us anytime. You can do it through email, you can do it through phone, you can access through the website as well. So I just wanted to mention that before we get started. So as we go into the next slide, these are the areas that we're really going to focus on today. And we're going to be together about a half an hour to go through this information. If after this presentation you want to really get more deep into some of these areas, we're going to stay a little bit more high level today. We have other webinars that come out throughout the year, so stay tuned for those as well. But the three areas we're going to focus on today: one, reviewing your investment choices, knowing what they are, and knowing which way you can go through the different options that you have. Determining if you're saving enough. So for those of you that are in the plan, which I'm assuming most of you are if you're on the webinar, maybe you're just taking a look at it for the first time, that's the number. First you're going to determine how much to save, then you're going to determine where to put the money. So consistently determining the amount of money you're saving is critically important to reaching your goals. We're going to focus on that as well. And then three, once you come up with your strategy, staying the course, really fine-tuning it as you go, but staying the course. You put the work in up front to design something that's efficient for you, and really staying on track with that plan is going to be really effective for you in the long run. The next slide just kind of gets us ready to talk about the investment choices. We're going to flip to the next one. You actually have a lot of different choices under the plan and through the trust, and there are a variety of choices from conservative, moderate, to aggressive. What we're going to talk about is a concept called asset allocation. When you're in long-term planning, which is what you are doing in a retirement plan where you have time horizon that lasts longer than maybe a year or 2 years or so, you're in what's called a long-term planning situation. And so a strategy that can really help you over that long run as the market goes up and down, or as you have different risks such as inflation risk, or maybe you have more of a conservative type risk with buying power and certain things like that, you really want to be spreading your assets out accordingly, taking advantage of the different asset classes when it makes sense for you based on your goals and objectives and time horizon, and changing those slowly over time, again, so it's efficient for you. That fundamental of investing is really valuable in long-term planning. One of the biggest drivers of long-term results is how you spread your money out between the different asset classes, the conservative, the moderate, and the aggressive. Once you determine that first kind of roadmap where maybe it's a certain percentage in the aggressive, a certain percentage in the moderate, and a certain percentage in the conservative, then you figure out what investments you're going to put your money into. And that next step is called diversification, spreading out into the different investment options, giving yourself more opportunity. Every investment option has different performance. They all don't perform the same. And so by doing that, you sort of spread out your risk, manage your risk, and smooth out your performance over time. And we're going to talk about that today. If you call the call center, and we can flip to the next slide while I'm just going through this point. If you call the call center, the wellness center, you can actually have the wellness center help you through that process. So if you've never gone through the investment questionnaire, if you've never determined what kind of an investor you are, really important to figure that out. Are you moderate? Are you aggressive? Are you further away from retirement or closer? And those specific goals around your own situation should drive the way that you invest into the plan. So a couple of other things you're going to do: reviewing your choices, choosing the variety of from the variety of investment options you have, rebalancing. We're going to talk about that. Very important as you figure out your portfolio that you do small little rebalances over time. Really helps to maximize your efficiency on the portfolio. We're going to talk about considering consolidating retirement funds. So if you have other accounts outside of this plan, moving it into this plan, you can roll assets into this account if they are qualified assets. And then monitoring those choices over time. And again, this is a long-term plan. So the approach that you take on a long-term planning strategy is very different than, let's just say, a short-term planning strategy, where the trends are happening much quicker. In long-term planning, the trends, you have some advantages over that. You have compounded earnings, your value of your money earning on itself. You've got the ups and downs of the market, right? We know that the market goes up and down, and we call that volatility, and so we can harness that to our advantage over time by using some of these strategies. So let's get into it. We're going to go into the next slide here. And I wanted to show you this chart, and I know it looks really, it's kind of messy. It kind of looks like a quilt, like a patchwork quilt. But what I want you to take away, and what you're going to see is from at the top is showing you the years, so 1999 on the left, 2013 on the right. The vertical column and the different squares are your asset classes, and the vertical column, the top box closest to the year, is the best performing asset class. The bottom is the worst. So when you look at this, if I were to say, hey, I'm going to charge you to go ahead and invest your retirement account based on the trends that you see in this chart, I think we'd all probably struggle to figure out what is the trend that we see. And there's a couple different strategies we've seen historically that people apply. One is, I'm going to put my money in the best performing asset class because I know next year it's going to keep continuing to be one of the best performing asset classes. Or we see other people say, you know what, I'm going to put my money in the worst performing because then I know it's going to be the best performing next year. Those are just, you know, estimates based on, again, something that if you look at this chart, there really isn't a trend. So instead of trying to guess or throw your dart at the dartboard, asset allocating or spreading your money out according to your own goals, your amount of risk that you want to take on in the different asset classes, will help to hedge that risk or manage that risk. So when you look at the chart and you see the white line, that's our diversified portfolio or our asset allocated portfolio. It's a portfolio that represents a variety of different asset classes underneath of it. And what you'll see there is it's not the top, right? We're not hitting the top, but we're also not hitting the bottom, which is really important when you look at your long-term performance. Because if we can smooth out your volatility over time, the ups and downs that your portfolio takes, the amount of money that you have at the end, you're giving yourself a better advantage to have a better overall result. So that's really the value in what we try to talk about when we express this asset allocation strategy, is again really trying to smooth out your ride so that your result, you have more opportunity for a positive result over time. So as we go into the next one, we're actually going to flip 2 over to talk about the different types of asset classes you have. And you'll see our little chart here, we have the arrow going up and down. So we've got our international equity on the top, small, mid, U.S. equity, and large. Those are what we call equity or aggressive investments. And those 3 different subclasses under equities, they range in risk, international being the most. What you're doing in this equity area is you're actually sharing in the profits and losses of corporations. So you're like a shareholder. And so there's definitely a high amount of investment risk related to that, right? The market going up and down, things like that. So determining how much to put into that is a part of the asset allocation strategy. Typically, your time horizon is going to play into that because for investors that have a longer time horizon, the ups and downs of the market have more opportunity to become smoother over time. For someone retiring in the next couple of years, having that investment risk on the table may not be a position they are interested in taking because, again, the volatility could go up and down and they may not have the time to recover from that. So again, it really, your time horizon, your comfort level with risk, and other factors really determine how much for you should invest in those different areas. Fixed income is the next one. That is what we call our bond asset class, would be a moderate amount of risk. That's where you're loaning money, essentially loaning to a company or loaning to the government. And there is a fluctuation there. There's a small amount of volatility, less than equities, but still there, swinging up and down slightly, and so in a more moderate range. The risk there is default risk. There's a potential for those loans to not be paid back and therefore have default risk. So there, in that asset class, you're taking more of a moderate opportunity. What that means is on the long term, the volatility may be a little less, but your opportunity to earn a return is going to be less than that equity asset class. Again, weighing that out between how much time you have, your comfort level, et cetera, really determines how much of that investment you should consider in your portfolio. And then the bottom one is our lower risk level. Still has risk, short-term or conservative investments like treasury bills, certificates of deposit, et cetera, still have risk inside of them because you're not taking very much risk in them. So what that means is, let's just say I have 20 years until I retire and I put my money into a conservative investment. My risk would be in that scenario, and that's just an example, would be not earning enough over time. I'd have inflation risk, right? Everything is going to get more expensive over time, and not keeping pace with inflation would be my potential risk in that scenario. So again, weighing out between your time horizon, your comfort level with risk, etc., would determine how much of that investment to consider in your portfolio. So the next slide talks about once you've figured this out, and again, we have a questionnaire in the call center that can really help you determine how much of every area that you should consider based on are you aggressive, conservative, moderate, etc., and really building out that framework. So once you've determined that framework and you've got your portfolio sort of set up, and again, I should mention there are two different ways you can look at investing inside the plan, inside the trust. You can go through the questionnaire process, figure out your asset allocation, go into the different investment choices and diversify, or you can actually use a target date investment which has that process built into it. So what you're determining in that is really what is your time frame and which target date fund would be more appropriate for you. Those investments have asset allocation built into them. They have what's called a glide path. So important to take a look at the information around that, and if you're calling the Wellness Center, they'll make sure that you have that information available to you. You can look at all that information on the Great West website at any time to see what's underlying that glide path. But essentially what that is it starts out more aggressive the further away from the target date. And as you get closer to the target date, it becomes more and more conservative over time until it reaches a certain allocation that just then stays consistent as it goes forward. So again, you want to look at that glide path, make sure you understand it so you know where to put yourself based on your time frame, etc. So those are really the two ways you can go in the trust. So once you've figured out which path you're kind of going down, if you go down the path of doing it yourself, a strategy that's really important to consider adding, and you can do it manually by yourself by going on the website and asking to do this rebalancing, or you can set it up to be automatic. Either way, it's important to consider handling that on your account, and that's what this slide is showing you. So over time, the portfolio you set up is going to change. The values of the different investments are going to fluctuate based on the risk levels they're taking on. We talked about that in the prior example. They all take different levels of risk. They're all going to fluctuate differently. And what happens is if you just let it go, you're not getting an efficiency as it goes forward. So in this example, what it's showing you is someone with a 50-50, right? We've got 50% in stocks and 50% in bonds. And over the course of time, now we have 25% in bonds and 75% in stock. Well, I'm sure depending on where the market is, et cetera, your performance is doing a certain way, but we can look at the picture from the left to the right and they're out of sync. Our original portfolio is no longer the way we had set it up to be. So rebalancing will basically sell off that 25% of equity that we now hold that was above and beyond what we set up, and buy 25% of bonds to bring it back to its original strategy. And what that does is, again, as market cycles happen, it makes that portfolio, it puts it in a more efficient position. So that's an important strategy to consider. If you have an account currently set up that you're managing yourself, so you set up your own portfolio, not under a target date, then you may want to consider going into the website and setting this up or doing a one-time rebalancing periodically that you do yourself. If you're in a target date, this is happening for you, so you don't have to worry about going into the website and rebalancing. It's just part of the service under the target date fund. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about, staying the course. So we've talked about the different investment choices, understanding what kind of an investor you are, determining that asset allocation. Do you want to do it yourself? Do you go with something that helps you do it through a target date, rebalancing, and now staying the course? So regardless of which choice you go with, if you go with a do-it-for-me or you go with a do-it-yourself option, it's really important to understand that things are going to happen outside of your portfolio design, meaning there's going to be events that happen in our economy, there's going to be events that happen in the market, and to try and hear all of that information coming to you and make adjustments to your portfolio is going to be very difficult to get everything right. So to hear a trend happening or to see something happening in the market and then to make an adjustment to your portfolio and then to make the adjustment back is very difficult. So going in and out of the market based on trends, trying to time the market, is a strategy that we typically would suggest not considering inside of the retirement plan. It's a lot of risk to take that on. And instead of going in and out based on market cycles and things like that, a better approach is to really stick with your strategy if you've done the homework and you know that it's appropriate for you, and make those small adjustments over time. And make adjustments to the portfolio based on your goals and objectives instead of based on market trends. So what this slide is showing you is a value of a $10,000 investment in the S&P 500 from 12/31/93 through 1/15/2014. So this is covering a lot of different market cycles. It's covering the most recent 2 downturns, including the most severe economic recession that we've had since the 50s, and covering some other cycles as well, including some positive, really positive cycles in the 90s and the most recent 5 years we've had. So we're getting a lot of exposure here of ups and downs. And what it's showing you is if in that course of that experience you had moved your account over, let's just say the market went down and you decided, oh, I'm going to move it out. I'm a little bit gun shy at this point, and I'm going to move it into a more conservative option, and then you miss putting it back into the risk level you would like to consider, and you miss some of the days that the market starts to go up, what would that do to your account? So what you can see here is if you miss the 50 best days, your account is at 4,021. If you miss the 40 best days, 5,762, getting a little bit better, missing 30 days. If we miss 20 days, we're making some money. If we miss 10, we're doubling. And then if we stayed in, we just let our strategy work for ourselves, we're at almost about 39,000, so 7.11% return. Again, this is an example. This is not based on a true scenario, but it is based on examples of what we've seen historically with portfolios over time. So the point here is sticking with your strategy, reviewing it based on your goals and objectives, making small changes based on that versus trying to go in and out of the market based on market trends is going to have more opportunity for you to have a positive result over time than trying to time the market. It's just very difficult and, again, takes a lot of risk for you as an investor. The next slide is talking about the questionnaire. I mentioned it earlier, but if you haven't done this before, even if you're in a target date fund, I'd recommend going through this process. I know the one we have up here is Principal, Your Plan is with Great West. This is just, I think we have different partners that we've used for doing these presentations. The questionnaire you will have is the actual ACEC questionnaire. If you call the Wellness Center, it won't look exactly like this, but the point is the same. The idea is trying to help you understand by asking a series of questions around your goals and objectives, how long until you retire, your comfort level with risk in a variety of different ways, where you fall on the spectrum. Are you aggressive? Are you moderate? Are you conservative? Are you moderate aggressive? And how that should drive your asset allocation in the investment choices that you have under the trust. So if you haven't gone through this, again, even if you're in a target date investment, would be something I would encourage, because knowing your personal stance on investing, knowing where you fit in that range is going to help you with decisions as you move forward. So now what? We've gone through looking at the asset allocation, talking a little bit about the different asset classes. You determine what kind of an investor you are. If we go to the next slide, we know how you're invested. We talked about rebalancing. The next part, if we go over to 2 slides over, is figuring out if you're saving enough. So if you're currently in the plan one of the areas that you should continually review is how much you're putting into the account. The investments, as we talked about, they have different risks. There's different ups and downs. The return that you are to receive is not a set number. It's definitely going to fluctuate depending on your strategy and the different investment choices. But we do know if we apply some of that asset allocation that we can help with our ups and downs and the volatility. But the biggest driver of your account is how much you're putting in. If you're not putting anything in, you're not going to have anything to go up and down. So if you continually review this and make small adjustments over time, you're going to see a value to your account. And so a couple of things I just want to remind you, and some of you this may be a refresher. If you're new to the plan and saving in a qualified plan, this might be new for you, but it's tax-deferred savings. So you can put the money in and the money is not taxed up front. So just other benefits, if you look at your paycheck, you usually tax first and then you receive the remaining and then you make the contribution. In this case, you pay yourself first. So in this example, someone with $13.50 biweekly pay, they do no contribution, taxable income of $13.50. They decide they're actually not going to save anything. Their taxes are $337.50. Their take home is $1,012. If they made an 8% contribution, you can see their contribution goes in 108. Taxable income comes down because they've now made that contribution. They pay a little bit less in taxes because they've put some money away, and their take-home pay is $931. So even though they saved $108, the difference isn't necessarily dollar for dollar because you save on taxes today. So that's just one thing I want to remind you of as you're figuring out, can I afford to put a little bit more in? Remember, it's not a dollar for dollar difference. There's a great site. There's some tools on the acecrt.com website. You can visit that. There's some calculators and some great tools to help you understand that. There's also another site called paycheckcity.com that you can access. You can pick the state you're in, and you can actually figure out what your take-home pay is. And that's a very quick, easy tool that you can access. The other item I'd mention is compounded earnings. There's a value you get in being in these plans for a long time, and that's that your money grows on top of itself over time. The other value of being in the plan longer is what we talked about earlier, your investments. The longer you're in the plan, the more opportunity to have for a positive result over time. The market, as you have longer time frames, has better results for you as an individual. Again, the shorter the time frame, the more volatility that can be in the market. So getting in early, letting your account work for itself, letting it compound on itself, and using some of these strategies around asset allocation can really help drive your results. So as we move to the next page, for those of you in the plan, and if you're just starting, increasing over time, you can see this is a value. This is exactly what this illustration is showing you. You're saving for 30 years. Philip saves $398,300. And so if we look on the left side, what we can see here is we've got Elaine, we've got Philip. Total contribution for Elaine is $229,400. She does an increase of 1% per year for the next 5 years to give her a little more, and you can see it bumps her up. So again, small increases over time actually do make a difference. This is an illustration, so your scenario may look a little different, not the same, obviously, but the illustration is sound. This is what we see for people that do implement this type of thing over their course of their savings. So I would encourage you to consider making those small adjustments over time. If you go through some of our tools to figure out how much you should be saving, and maybe 10 to 15% is hard to start with, make a small adjustment. Inch yourself up there, but move yourself in that direction. Generally speaking, getting to 10 to 15% of your own contribution is going to give you a good opportunity to reach your goal. Everyone's a little different, so I do want to clarify that that's just a general idea, but that hopefully should get you in the right direction, and then looking at your situation specifically, you can really drive that home by understanding what you should be doing to meet your goal. So as we flip to the next, we're going to flip 2 over. Staying the course, and go one more slide as well. We're going to talk about just staying focused on your goals. So once you do all this work, and that's the upfront work on learning what kind of asset allocation you should have, looking at the underlying investments and diversifying, figuring out how much to save, and then just small little tweaks. That's a lot of the work that goes into it is right up front. I think instead some people wait and they kind of do that later. And instead, I would challenge you to do that early. Get that plan in place, and then stay focused on those goals. Look at this yearly. Take a little bit of time. Retirement, we're living longer, and your retirement could last as long as your working years. And so you can think of this as one of the longest vacations that you're going to take. You're not going to have income coming in, and what do you want that to look like? I like to use that example. If anyone's planned a vacation recently, how much time you took planning that vacation. I know it can take, depending on what you're doing, it can take several days or a lot of weeks of different hours here and there, and that's just planning a shorter vacation. Think of this as a really long vacation. How much do you want to put focus on that to make it a good one? And so I would challenge you to look at this annually. If you have a significant event, pay attention to it. Think about your retirement plan and how that could adjust things for yourself, and really look at increasing that contribution over time. That's really important to reaching that goal. The other couple of things on the next slide, just as reminders, look at your beneficiary. If you haven't done that in a while, it's a good idea to look at your designated beneficiaries. You can have, you have primary beneficiaries. If you're married, obviously that's your spouse, unless they sign a waiver waiving that right. But you can have supplemental beneficiaries or secondary beneficiaries. Important to set all those things up and make sure they're right. If you have a life-changing event, go back to that beneficiary election and make sure it's still appropriate in the way that you want to allocate that account. Know your balances and contribution amounts. That's part of the review process on an annual basis. And look at your statements. Really look at your statements and take note of what you've got going on your account. So the final couple things I just want to leave you with, and we're going to flip to the details on the financial wellness program. You can find information for the financial wellness program in a lot of different ways, and we'll just go back one slide to the social media. There's a lot of, if you like Facebook, if you like Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, there's a lot of different ways you can stay connected. We're sending out a lot of information your way, things to remind you, things to think about. If you miss a webinar that we have on a monthly basis, you can catch it on the YouTube channel. So that's a great way to maybe watch a video about something you're interested in. Maybe that's applicable to you in your scenario. And then the final slide there we'll just leave you with is the Wellness Help Center information. So you can email us at financialwellness@acecrt.com. You can call at 844-ACECRT-8 and ask any question related to retirement planning, your account specifically, education on the investments, whatever it may be. We're here to help you. So thanks for letting me have an opportunity to talk a little bit about the investment choices, things to consider. Are there any questions at this point?
Thank you, Devin. We appreciate you sharing your time and knowledge with everyone here today. And yes, we do have some questions that have filtered in. The first question is, when you say to put 10 to 15% towards retirement, is that monthly, bi-monthly?
Yeah, so your 10 to 15% is taken out of your pay on a per pay period basis. So whatever that is for your organization, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, it comes out slowly over the year. You can kind of think of it as an annual number, but it's taken out per paycheck, if that helps.
Great. Thank you, Devin. Our next question, what's a good resource to use to help calculate how your retirement contributions are tracking long term?
So essentially asking, are you on track to retire? And that's a great question. If you haven't signed up for the Personal Financial Portal, it is a tool you have available through the Wellness Program. And in that tool, you can link this account and it will feed everything into it. And then there's actually an exercise you can go through that will tell you if you're on track to retire. And you can adjust that contribution to see if I go up or down, if that will make a difference to me being closer or further away. So that's a tool I would say, if you haven't signed up for it, please shoot a message over to the Financial Wellness Help Center and let us know, and we can get you signed up for that. And again, it's very easy. I think that's a tool that you can access consistently to answer that question for you.
Great. Devin, it appears we have no more questions at this time, so this will conclude our webinar session. Again, thank you, Devin, and thank you, attendees, for your participation. I hope you all have a great day, and we're looking forward to our next webinar series with you. Happy holidays, everyone.